what I say to Bernie Sanders and our other political leaders: get off your ass and come up with solutions that will foster the unfolding of this future. Stop trying to argue to keep the status quo, because the status quo is done. And you, Bernie, need to get with the program and figure out a way to bridge this status quo where we've been earning our living to the future where we no longer have to do that because everything is abundant. I'm going to critique the announcement Bernie Sanders made last Wednesday so that the next time Bernie Sanders or a politician makes some comments about the AI age that is coming, you'll have a better, broader perspective and better context in which to hear what they're talking about. Who am I? I'm Perry Gruber, the Enlightenment Guy. Let's watch this one together.
Thanks very much for joining me. You know, in the midst of these unprecedented and crazy times, government shutdown, Trump's devastation of healthcare in America, climate change, the move toward authoritarianism, the horrific war in Gaza, the growth of oligarchy, etc., etc., etc. I want to take a few minutes talking about another issue of enormous consequence that just doesn't get the kind of attention I think it deserves. Everybody agrees that artificial intelligence, AI, and robotics are going to have a transformative impact on our country and the world. There is very little disagreement about that. There are, however, very strong disagreements as to what those impacts will be, who will benefit from these changes, and who will be hurt.
So let me just jump in here and say, this is a politician, and he is coming with a particular agenda. He has a dog in this fight, and one of his dogs is to scare you into believing that there is something at stake that you will lose as a result of human society moving into this AI future. And that is not the case. This is classic Bernie Sanders pitting the labor class against the capitalist class. And what's really remarkable here is that he is about to make an argument supporting you still being a laborer, keeping your job, when the future we are moving into is a spiritually expanded future enabled by artificial intelligence, one where you do not have to be beholden to a job in order to get what you want. And so he's couching his announcement in a labor versus the oligarchs argument when, as you'll hear later, the people he is about to point out are actually creating a reality, our future, that is going to free every single human on the planet. Let's keep listening.
So here is my take. Some of the very wealthiest people in the world, including Elon Musk, Larry Ellison, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, and others, are now investing hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars into these revolutionary, transformative technologies.
Now, he's 100% correct about this. And here's why this is a fabulous thing. Yes, people like Larry Ellison and Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg see tremendous opportunity to profit. But these people are also the only ones who have the wherewithal, the financial means to be able to invest in these kinds of technologies that are creating the future. Pretty much most of us, including you and me, if you're in your right mind, is going to find extremely in line with everything we want. This super abundant Star Trek-like future, something that we once thought was science fiction, is becoming fact. And in order for us to move into that future, because we're in a capitalist, money-based scarcity-based economy, we have to have money to invest in these technologies so these technologies can expand and grow. And it's going to cost hundreds of billions of dollars. Where's that money going to come from? Well, in the dominating capital system, which is capitalism, the place it comes from is from the capitalist class, the people who have all the money. They don't have all the money, but you get my point. And so these people, the people he's mentioning, the people he's indirectly vilifying, are actually the people that are funding the unfolding of the future that we're all going to enjoy. But what Bernie Sanders is trying to get you to see is that this is a bad thing and somehow it's going to harm us all and only enrich these people. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And I'm going to hit this point over and over again. If you listen to what these people, the people who are funding these technologies, are saying, and if you listen to the leaders of the companies and you listen to the engineers inside the companies, almost everyone is unanimously agreeing that while there is potential for peril, there's a whole lot of potential for promise. And that promise looks like a future that is super abundant, where human beings don't have to spend a third of their lives working, where money no longer constrains what's possible, and where people can live free in every sense of that word on a planet that has been ecologically restored. What is bad about that? I'm going to hit this point over and over again throughout Bernie's little presentation here, because he's making an argument that where we're going is bad. And he's doing it because he's been doing this for years, pitting people like you and me, the working class, against the capitalist class. And the fact is, that has never been a confrontational situation. From a certain perspective, it looks like that. It looks like labor and management have been butting heads. It looks like that because our system is based on scarcity. But the future we're moving into makes scarcity a thing of the past. Let's keep listening to Bernie.
Now, why is that? Why are they doing that? Is it because they want to improve the standard of living of the 60% of our people who live paycheck to paycheck?
Yes. They've already said this over and over again.
Americans who are struggling to pay for groceries, healthcare, housing, education?
Yes. Almost every one of these people who are investing in these technologies and see the potential of it have all said that the things he's currently talking about will be provided in such abundance that it will be so inexpensive that you can get anything you want easily. It'll be close to free. And in order for us to get there, we need people like the people investing in these technologies to invest in the technology so the technologies grow so that we can have the future that they're promising, that they see the technology promising. And government has to catch up like it always does. Government always lags behind innovation. And so that's what we're seeing. But Bernie here, you see that last word in that sentence? He tries to discount what these investors and innovators have been saying almost since day one. It's not a maybe, it's a certainty. It's a certainty that these things he's talking about are going to be provided at a cost so low that it isn't even going to be, it's going to be nominal paying for them. Most of those things are going to be offered at no cost to anyone. Because why do I know that? Because all of the people investing in these technologies are saying that's what they're wanting to do. Elon Musk has even said he's heading towards the Star Trek future. That's his intention.
Maybe. Maybe they are staying up nights worrying about the working families of America.
They aren't. They aren't up nights worrying about the working class families of America. They're probably up at night trying to figure out the really difficult problems that are standing between us and the future that they see. Again, people's individual intentions serve your intentions. The individual selfish acts of these people who are investing in these technologies, their selfish acts in their own self-interest, are going to produce results that will allow you to act in your selfish interest. In other words, we're all here co-creating the experience we're having. And the challenge is, it's seemed adversarial because people like Bernie Sanders keeps framing what's going on in this planet in that way. And so you've been trained to see the world that way, when instead, everything that's happening on this planet is a co-creation, and it's all happening for your individual benefit and the individual benefit of everybody else. And finally, because human beings have gotten to the point where either the resistant ones, the stubborn ones, have died off, and the new, eager ones for the future have come forward, finally we're at the place where the tipping point exists, where the future I'm talking about, which is the same future all the technologists and the people investing in these technologies are talking about, this Star Trek future, it's finally able to happen because we're leaning more in that direction instead of the direction, the silly direction that Bernie Sanders here is talking about in this whole presentation, where he's pitting you, the labor class, against the capitalist class, when instead both classes are on the same side.
But I doubt it. I think it's because investing in AI and robotics will increase their already incredible wealth and power.
Yeah, it is going to increase their wealth and power. It is going to increase their wealth and power, but that's not the only reason why they're doing it. If you look at Elon Musk pretty much doesn't care about the money he has. He's sold all his houses, and his intentions have always been, he's said this over and over, to create superabundance. In fact, the recent Tesla announcement of phase 4 of their strategic plan is stated exactly that. Eliminating scarcity. Not eliminating scarcity just for Elon Musk, but for everybody. And that includes working families. So Bernie here is, I want to say he's being disingenuous in framing what's happening the way he is. But I really think what he's doing is he's trying to keep your votes. And he keeps your votes by keeping you agitated. Agitated against rich people. Agitated against the potential of you losing your job, which is a good thing, actually, you'll see, and more. Let's keep watching.
Among other impacts, the artificial intelligence and robotics being developed by these multi-billionaires will allow corporate America to wipe out tens of millions of decent-paying jobs, cut labor costs, and boost profits.
Yes, so he's right. He's right. They're gonna cut more than tens of millions of decent-paying jobs. Artificial intelligence is going to eliminate many high-paying jobs, and eventually, artificial intelligence and humanoid robots, powered by the sun, this stellar core technologies, is going to eliminate every job. And that's not going to be a bad thing. And as that happens, as people lose their jobs, just like in COVID, when we saw people not being able to go work, the government's going to have to step in and recreate civilization. And these people who are investing in these technologies, they're already thinking about this. If you look on YouTube, you will see, and not just rich people, you'll see lots of people who are in favor of the future that Bernie Sanders is decrying. Lots of people who are in favor of it, people like me, not necessarily spiritually oriented people like me, but there are lots of people who are proposing ways that the government can step in and provide the bridge, the financial bridge to this future. in the same way that government did in COVID when it paid everyone 3 different stimulus checks. So, yes, the companies are going to profit. Yes, jobs are going to go away. But this is not a bad thing. This is a very good thing, as many people saw during COVID. Because here's the thing, you guys. I don't know if you remember COVID, but if I remember COVID, and I remember feeling great that I didn't have to go to work every day. And I know a lot of other people were finding that great too. That's why many companies had to adapt to having people working from home, is because they didn't want to go back to working in the office. The same thing is going to be happening as people lose their job, as long as the government steps in with a solution to the gap where people are still going to need money in order to get the things they want. But during that gap, the prices of things are going to come dramatically down, because artificial intelligence, humanoid robots powered by the sun, are going to make the cost of making things drop near to zero. And, some people argue, well, that doesn't mean that the companies are going to lower their prices. There are lots of people on YouTube describing how that has to happen. It has to happen, because that's how market dynamics work. The companies are going to lower their prices, and the government is going to have to do something in order to replace the money that people were getting from jobs that are not going to be around anymore. And all of this is happening in the context of the spiritual dynamics underpinning how physical reality works. And there are more people now wanting this future where we don't have to work anymore than there are people who don't want it. That's why it's happening, because the timing is divinely timed to create a future that is aligned with where humanity wants to go. And that's what we're seeing. Let's keep listening to Bernie.
The result? The wealthiest people in the world will get even richer, while working families lose their jobs and their income. And unless we act, here is, in my view, I don't claim to have all the answers, but in my view, this is what is likely to happen in the next 10 years. Now, as a member of Congress who vigorously opposed the disastrous trade agreements that decimated communities throughout this country, I, like most Americans, want to see manufacturing rebuilt in the United States of America.
I would like to see manufacturing in the United States rebuilt too, until those manufacturing jobs can be taken over by robots. Because many of those manufacturing jobs are dangerous, they're repetitive, they're boring, and to some degree, the reason why people do those jobs is because they have to, because they need the money. Sure, there are people out there who derive pride from working on an assembly line where generations of their family have done that, but that's just entrained momentum of belief. I would wager that if those people were told, hey, we're going to pay you the salary you make, we're essentially going to make it as though you're going to work every day, but you don't have to go to work every day. You're totally free. You'll still get the income you need to pay for your food or what have you, but you won't have to go to work anymore. Would you like that? I would suggest that most people would say yes, and those who would say no have been entrained in the belief, it's just a belief, that their worth comes from their output, their contribution. The problem is, the contribution they're thinking their worth comes from only has to do with the contribution to that job, and that's the distortion. Because your worth is not just in what you do at work. It's who you're being and how who you're being impacts others. Even when it impacts others in negative ways, it's still producing worth and value. We're moving into a time when where we human beings are going to have to reassess what it means to be human. That's the future we're moving into. And that's a powerful, positive future, but only for those who can see it that way. And what Bernie here is trying to do is he's trying to get you to see it his way, which is a pessimistic way, a negative way, a way embroiled in peril instead of the promise. And he's scapegoating rich people who are the very people who are making these technologies possible for the rest of us.
But let us be clear. New factories won't mean much for working people if the jobs are done by robots instead of human beings.
That's correct. That's correct. Robots are going to be doing most of that work because most of that manufacturing, as I just said, is boring and repetitive, and robots can do it better. It just makes sense for that to happen. Working families is a ridiculous phrase. It's a political phrase. It's a political phrase. Why is it that families have to be working? Why is it that both parents have to be out of the house spending a third of their lives working for an income? What if they can spend 2/3 of their lives doing what they love, whatever that happens to be, hanging out with family, pursuing hobbies, traveling, just enjoying life, and 1/3 of their lives sleeping? How is that a bad thing? I call that liberation. And that's what we're seeing emerging from this AI-enabled future. But Bernie Sanders is trying to keep you in the old paradigm, the paradigm that says you have to work for a living, and making it seem honorable by calling it working families. That's a bunch of crap. Crap that you've been entrained to if you're nodding your head to what he's saying, because he's out of touch. His words are out of touch with the future that's coming, the AI-enabled future, the spiritually oriented future that is more aligned with who you are as a spiritual being, which is pure positive energy here for the fun of living on this planet, not here to spend a third of your life, or for some people, it's 2/3 of your life working and then a third of your life asleep. Let's keep watching.
Elon Musk has said he wants Tesla to build millions of robots.
That's right. Elon Musk has said it's more than millions. It's hundreds of millions. It's billions of robots. And the reason why he wants Tesla to build those robots is so that these robots can free us from having to work. Create a future where anything you want. Elon Musk has said this specifically. In fact, I'm gonna splice in at this point in this video, this commentary, I'm gonna splice in Elon Musk saying this himself. The Star Trek enabled future where scarcity is a thing of the past, and anything you want, almost anything you can have, almost anything you want, you can have. That's why he's wanting to create these robots. But again, Bernie wants you to think it's for some nefarious oligarchy purpose. It's not. It's because Elon Musk sees the future as a future where all of us are liberated from the perils of labor, the boring effects that labor has on us, the bondage that labor creates for us.
And what will these robots do? Well, obviously, they will replace the men and women working in our factories, warehouses, and in restaurants and in other areas. That means millions of good jobs could disappear. It's not very complicated.
Are these jobs really good? Working in a warehouse? Breaking your back? Doing these repetitive things, moving boxes around? Are those really good jobs? Working in a factory where you could get your arms torn out? Or in a sawmill where you could get killed or you lose your hearing because of all the equipment is so loud? Are these really good jobs? Where you're sitting in a cubicle all day, moving papers around and crunching numbers and things like that? Are those really good jobs? I'll tell you what a good job is. A good job is spending time with your kids. A good job is spending time with your spouse or your girlfriend or your boyfriend. A good job is going out and doing something that makes the world a better place. Like remediating the ecological damage we've produced on the planet, or helping people embrace their liberation by helping them adapt to a world where there are no jobs. These are good jobs, especially in light where artificial intelligence, humanoid robots powered by electricity, powered by the sun, can do all these other jobs that are boring and repetitive and dangerous. Most people don't realize that the jobs we're working are almost primarily responsible for the illnesses, for the lack of well-being we enjoy. It's why so many people smoke and drink and party on the weekends. It's because their jobs are soul crushing. It's why so many people are, I know this is going to be controversial, addicted to cannabis, because they're numbing themselves, partly because of their soul numbing work, these good jobs that Bernie Sanders is talking about. These are not good jobs he's talking about. That's why they're going to go away, where humanoid robots are doing them, because robots can do them better, and robots don't care that they're boring, repetitive, and dangerous. This is a good thing that these jobs are going away. It's not a bad thing.
And of course, it's not just Musk. Amazon, owned by Jeff Bezos, has already laid off 27,000 workers since 2022. The company now has more than 1 million robots working in its warehouses, and soon these robots will outnumber human workers in Amazon facilities. In 2016, Foxconn, the massive manufacturing contractor for companies like Apple and Google, replaced 60,000 workers in a single huge factory in China with robots. Now, the company is planning fully automated factories. And just a few months ago, Foxconn CEO Young Liu predicted that artificial intelligence will make it unnecessary for large corporations to outsource jobs to low-wage countries. You know why? Because robots will be doing most of the manufacturing work. However, it is not just manufacturing jobs at risk. Most of us want to see the United States develop a strong, clean, and efficient transportation system, including the production of millions of new cars, buses, and trucks. But if Musk and others get their way, those vehicles won't be operated by truck drivers, bus drivers, or taxi drivers. They will be driverless vehicles.
So I really want to laugh in Bernie Sanders' face with the statistics he's offered. The companies are laying off people and replacing them with robots, no doubt. But do you think a human being can drive any vehicle more efficiently than full self-driving automated vehicles? What is more efficient? A more efficient transportation system would be one that takes humans out of the driver's seat. Not only would it be more efficient because those vehicles could travel 24 hours a day instead of human drivers that need brakes and that make mistakes that cause crashes. Human drivers get behind the wheel, even commercial vehicles, drunk and kill people. Can you see the laughable nature of the argument that Bernie Sanders is making here? And a more efficient transportation system that he claims would be more efficient with more human drivers in it? It makes no sense whatsoever. You can, with an automated trucking system, you can create a platoon of trucks and almost as many trucks as could fit on the roads, driving, I believe it's less than 6 feet from each other. driving at high speed with no faults in their trajectory, no accidents. That is an efficient system, not one where a human driver is behind the wheel who could potentially fall asleep behind the wheel or get bored and not pay attention to what they're doing and cause a pileup. The argument Bernie is making here is that somehow the future transportation system that's coming is going to be more efficient if there are more taxi drivers, truck drivers, etc., bus drivers. Those jobs don't make those systems efficient. And in the process, those jobs aren't necessarily fulfilling. Some people may enjoy those jobs, but a lot of those people hate those jobs. 2 of my clients were once truck drivers, and they hated those jobs. And they hated the management that they drove under because management treated them like slaves or worse. Why on earth is Bernie Sanders trying to preserve those jobs when there's no good reason for human beings to be doing those jobs? Especially, this is so good, when the future system where those jobs are gone are forcing the government to look at innovative ways to get people the money that they once worked for. And there are lots of alternatives for doing that. We do not have to preserve jobs in order for people to get money. It's a stupid argument. It makes no sense whatsoever, especially in light of the artificial intelligence explosion that's about to come within the next 10 years.
Millions of jobs in transportation will be eliminated. This is not science fiction. It's already happening. FedEx is using driverless trucks to haul heavy loads along the I-45 corridor between Dallas and Houston through a company called Aurora. Walmart is using autonomous trucks for short-haul deliveries in Arkansas through a company called Gatik. Kodiak Robotics has partnered with IKEA to conduct driverless deliveries in Texas. Waymo is operating self-driving cabs in Los Angeles, Phoenix, San Francisco, Atlanta, and Austin.
Yeah, these are all great pilot projects because they are helping the artificial intelligence community to understand the extremely complicated nature of creating vehicles that can drive autonomously. Those autonomous vehicles are increasing the efficiency of those organizations, and in contributing to the pool of data that artificial intelligence is using, they will help contribute to the rise of humanoid robots powered by the sun so that they can do the tasks in warehouses and factories that humans currently do, so that we can free those people from having to work those jobs, which then will force the government to figure out ways to get those people the money they need to get the things they need, until we realize that we don't necessarily need money to provide things that people need because you can just provide them. When artificial intelligence, humanoid robots powered by the sun, are making everything that humans need. If artificial intelligence and humanoid robots powered by the sun are making everything humans need, why do people need money for the things those robots are making? Because it's not, you got to think about economics. Let me put me on here. The reason why you have to pay money for goods and services is because people are making those goods and services. 80% of the cost of running a business is paying people in the business. So if you take the people out of it, suddenly 80% of your costs are gone. Do you see that? Now, let's say that 2 companies are competing each other in the same business, and one company decides to fully automate their workforce and the other does not. So now you have Company A, the automated one, competing with Company B that has workers in it. Company A can easily outprice Company B. But then let's say Company B decides to automate too. So now you have competitive pressure on price alone, which means the prices of those goods and services are going to drop. But the really cool thing here is the young people today that are going to be tomorrow's CEOs, some of them are already in those seats. Sam Altman is one. There's a Asian guy who's a multi-billionaire who created an artificial intelligence company. I don't remember his name. He was featured on CSNBC recently. Those younger people who are taking the seats in management, those people, just like Elon Musk, want the Star Trek future. They're not here to make a whole bunch of money, even though they do. They're here to create the future that we all have been dreaming of in our science fictions. And so, yes, Bernie's right. This is not science fiction. It's happening today. And it's a good thing it's happening today. And it's happening faster and faster. And eventually, everybody's going to benefit from it. Not just the oligarchs, not just the rich people, not just Larry Ellison and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. Everybody's going to benefit.
We all want to see more startup companies and small businesses. But for workers, that will mean very little if half of all white-collar entry-level jobs are eliminated over the next 5 years. And that is exactly what has been predicted by Dario Amodei, the founder of Anthropic.
That's right. White-collar jobs are at risk also. And this is a good thing because... Calm down. Bernie Sanders here is arguing for the status quo. Politicians love the status quo. They love the status quo because they can keep you entrained to voting for them by keeping you in fear of losing the status quo. Whereas the status quo is giving way and there's no stopping it. Like he said here, the jobs are going, not just the blue-collar jobs, the white-collar jobs too. But in order for the new future to arrive, the government has to do something different. It can't continue to do what it's doing. And because of that, politicians are afraid. As decentralized technologies, artificial intelligence, blockchain, and other on-chain technologies come of age, we're going to see that politicians' control of government and society is going to wane. They're no longer going to be able to control it. For the first time in history, we're truly getting to the point where each person will have authority and autonomy over how they interact in society without having a small group of people, politicians, telling us what we can and can't do. Bernie Sanders here is arguing for the status quo. The status quo where people like him get to set the laws, sure, presumably on the behalf of the people, but more often on the behalf of people in power. Decentralization, artificial intelligence, humanoid robots, and more are leveling the playing field. It is not a scary thing unless you listen to people like Elon Musk. And documents like that 2027 paper, the video which was called "We're Not Ready for Superintelligence" was created from, that I commented on last week. Bernie Sanders doesn't really know what he's talking about. Or, here's the thing, or he knows what he's talking about. He's just couching it in a disingenuous context, one that pits you, the laborers, against the people who are investing in the technologies that are creating the future that's going to liberate all of us and empower us all as well. Let's keep listening.
As the ranking member of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, I just released a report finding that AI, automation, and robotics could replace nearly 100 million jobs in America over the next decade, including 40% of registered nurses, 47% of truck drivers, 64% of accountants, 65% of teaching assistants, and 89% of fast food workers, among many other occupations.
Yeah, and what I say to those stats, which are legitimate, probably conservative, what I say to Bernie Sanders and our other political leaders, get off your ass and come up with solutions that will foster the unfolding of this future. Stop trying to argue to keep the status quo. Because the status quo is done. And you, Bernie, need to get with the program and figure out a way to bridge this status quo where we've been earning our living to the future where we no longer have to do that because everything is abundant. Get off your ass and come up with a solution. Stop trying to argue to preserve the status quo.
And as bad as that may seem, I'm afraid it could be an underestimate. In June, the CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, predicted that AI could eliminate, quote, literally half of all white-collar jobs in the U.S., end quote, within the next decade. That's Jim Farley, Ford. Elon Musk said this year that as a result of AI and robotics, quote, probably none of us will have a job. If you want a job, that's kind of like a hobby. You can do a job. But otherwise, AI and robotics will provide any goods and services you want, end of quote.
That is what Elon Musk said. And he also said in that same quote that there's going to be superabundance for everybody. His point, Elon's point is, in the future, jobs are going to be unnecessary. He didn't say jobs are going away and you guys are going to suck because there's not going to be any income for you to afford what you want. That is not what he said. What he's been always saying is, speaking for him, I'm going to eliminate scarcity and create an environment on the planet where there is nothing but superabundance. And in that superabundance reality, you will not have to work. That's what he's been saying. And that's a good thing. Why is Bernie making it into a bad thing? Why is Bernie being disingenuous about what Elon Musk is saying and only taking part of the quote that he's quoting here? Why is he doing that? It's a question worth asking.
Earlier this year, Bill Gates predicted that humans, quote, won't be needed for most things, end quote, such as manufacturing products, delivering packages, or growing food over the next decade due to AI. So, my friends, here is a rather big question. If Musk and Gates and others are only half right in their predictions, what happens to the tens of millions of Americans who no longer have employment because they can't find jobs? In this brave...
What happens is, Bernie, you have to get off your ass and come up with a solution that bridges us to that future. And you should be probably, instead of being online right now, publishing this disingenuous video, you should be in the halls of Congress working to come up with a solution that allows human beings to live their lives productively and leisurely without having to work for an income. That's what you should be doing. That's what you should be. You're supposed to be a political leader. Is this political leadership? Talking about how this future is going to be disastrous for humanity and that oligarchs are responsible and that working families are going to somehow be harmed by this future? When instead, all of the people who've been prosecuting this future have been saying that it's going to liberate humanity in a world of superabundance? Get off your ass and do something. Create a solution that moves us, that bridges where we are now in a job-based, income-based economy to the future where there are no jobs and no need for an income. Come up with the solution. Don't point to problems. Don't make up problems as a way to foster votes.
How do these Americans pay for healthcare, food, housing, and the other necessities of life?
The answer to that question is they don't have to. You, Bernie Sanders, can work with your colleagues in Congress to come up with a solution where those things are basic human rights, where they're provided. You can come up with laws that create the U.S. Sovereign Wealth Fund. I know there's at least one idea out there where they make an argument, the proponents of this idea make an argument for offering these big corporations a tax cut, a generous tax cut, for donating stock into a sovereign wealth fund that eventually becomes a massive fund capable of paying people the income they need in the interim to afford what they need. We can also, through automation, remember, human labor makes up 85% at least of the cost of producing anything. So if artificial intelligence and humanoid robots powered by the sun have taken over all the jobs, why you can cut out 85% of the cost of everything. So if your health, just to make the math simple, if your healthcare, your family healthcare costs you $100 a month and automation takes over all the jobs, you should be able to pay only $15 a month, I think that math is right, for what you are ordinarily paying $100 for. Which means you don't need as much income either. You see? You got to put your noggin to these things. But Bernie Sanders doesn't want you to put your noggin to things. He wants you to be afraid of this future. And he wants to blame oligarchs for the future that's going to liberate you, when he should be getting off his keister and coming up with solutions that will bridge this reality with that future reality that's coming before it gets so harrowing that people demand he do it. Let's keep listening.
But it's not just economics. Work, whether being a janitor or a brain surgeon, is an integral part of being a human being.
No. Work, whether a janitor or a brain surgeon, is not integral to being a human being. Being a human being means expressing who you are as an individual, sovereign instantiation of pure positive energy. It means doing what you love to do. Now, that may be being a brain surgeon, and perhaps it's being a janitor. I know someone, I did a blog a long time ago, of someone who loves being a phlebotomist, someone who injects people with medicines through intravenous means. But I would argue very few people, when they're children, say, when I grow up, I want to be a phlebotomist, or when I grow up, I want to be a janitor, or when I grow up, I want to work 3 jobs so I can support my family. Working is a construct resulting from a flawed understanding built on scarcity. And what we're seeing is the development of a future where scarcity is no longer a thing, where you don't have to work to get what you need. And the question is, how do I keep working to get what I need in an environment where I don't need to work? That's not the question. The question is, what do I do with all the time that's freed up as a result of no longer having to work? That's the question. And the answer to that, in a large part, is discover who you are and express more of that in the world through your passions. Work is not an integral part of being a human being. Work is a fiction that was turned into a demand that has human beings contributing to a system that depends on them working. And what we're seeing is that system is about to fall apart because human beings aren't going to have to work anymore. Now, I just want to lay it out there. There are some people out there who really genuinely love their work. They really genuinely love it and they're good at it. But that is not the majority of people. Most people, and I haven't talked to most people, but I do have clients and I have spoken with them. When I ask them, what would you do if you had all the money in the world? They do not say, I would keep on doing the job I'm currently doing. So think about that. Is work really integral to being a human being? Or is work indoctrination, brainwashing that we've all accepted to cover up the fact that human beings are forced to work in order to get what they need? Because a certain group of people, I'm not talking about conspiracies here, a certain group of people felt the need to control human beings because they felt human beings somehow were prone to lethargy or to being ruled by the devil or some other silly notion like that. Something to really consider. Work is not an integral part of being a human being. This is totally false.
The vast majority of people want to be productive members of society and contribute to their communities. What happens when that vital aspect of human existence is removed from our lives? Further, and now we get into some pretty deep stuff, the rapid developments in AI will likely have a profoundly dehumanizing impact on all of us. In many ways, it will actually redefine what it means to be human, fundamentally alter our relationships to each other, and the very nature of what we call society.
Which is why I'm saying, Bernie, get off your ass and come up with a solution, because it is going to do all of that. But that is not a negative thing. That's a good thing. It's going to change the very nature of what we call society. That's right. We've based society on the idea that we have to earn a living, that if you're not out there earning a living, somehow you're a lazy bum. No other species on the planet lives that way. No other species on the planet judges another member of the species as being lazy if they don't work. Bernie's got some problems, and now he's trying to make his problems your problems, and he's doing that in order to keep you voting for him. But if you listen closely to what he's saying here, he doesn't have a clue about what's really coming. Oh, he sees the statistics. He sees the statistics, but he sees them through distorted lenses that have him thinking that work is an integral part of being human. Not working to earn a living. The thing that's integral to being human is feeling like you're contributing value to other humans. And those things that have you feel that way have nothing to do with what you do when you go to work. Someone has trained you into that. Your contribution to other human beings happens at the level of human being, not what you do in your cubicle or on the assembly line.
Can AI and robotics be of help to us in many ways? Absolutely. I believe they can. I am not a Luddite. The goal, however, is to make sure that the new technologies being developed serve human needs and not just further enrich a small number of multi-billionaires.
It is going to serve human needs. Getting rid of all the jobs serves human needs. What do humans need? They need to live healthily. They need to live in well-being. They need to live free of disease, free of stress, the negative stress. They need to live in an environment where their kids can go to school and not have them die in a hail of bullets. They need to live in a society that's safe, not one that's so toxic that it causes members of the society to shoot up and kill other members. They need to live in a society where people aren't so stressed out that they have to resort to drugs to numb themselves or alcohol and then get behind the wheel and kill a bunch of people. That's what humans need, not jobs, Bernie. Hello?
We do not simply need a more efficient society. We need a world where people live healthier, happier, and more fulfilling lives.
And that's what they will do in this new future.
Where do we go from here? And again, I don't have all of the answers, but here are just a few ideas as to how, in my view, the advances in technology can benefit ordinary Americans and not just multi-billionaires. First, we must move to a 32-hour work week with no loss in pay.
This is a good idea. Reducing the work week is a good idea because artificial intelligence is going to make people more efficient. And there's no reason why people need to continue working what they currently work. This is a good idea.
Think about it. Today, American workers are 400% more productive than they were in the 1940s when the 40-hour work week was first established. Artificial intelligence and robotics will greatly increase that productivity. Workers must benefit from that increased output through a shorter work week.
Yeah, it's a good idea. It's a good idea to reduce. I would suggest that it's a better idea to gradually step down the amount of time people have to be at work as AI and humanoid robots take over jobs. So you have like an off-ramp of people working rather than a cliff. That's a good idea to start. But eventually you have to plan for humans not working at all. And I don't think Bernie is on board with that at this point. Are you, Bernie? I don't think you are. Are you? I don't think you are.
32-hour work week with no loss in pay would be a major step forward in improving the quality of life for millions of Americans. Second, we must require large corporations to allow workers to elect at least 45% of the members of their boards of directors, similar to what already takes place in Germany. Workers need a seat at the table to best determine how AI is used in their companies. If Tesla...
So this is the challenge, because if Bernie is right, I don't think he is, but if he's right, then a lot of the workers, and if you look in the comment section of this video of his, the original video, you will see this is accurate. A lot of workers, a lot of working class families are up in arms at what Bernie is saying here. They agree with him. And what that means is you're going to have a lot of people, if he's agreeing to, if his idea of having workers elect 45% of the boards of directors of companies, you're going to have employees who are brainwashed into thinking their jobs are important and valuable to trying to keep humans working in jobs. It's just like what happened here in where I live when self-checkout stations became available, and the grocery union fought hard to keep or limit the number of self-checkout stations there were, because people needed those jobs, even though those jobs were boring and repetitive and often subjected people to unruly, rude, and sometimes violent customers. So if employees aren't always the best at determining how a company should run. Now, there are lots of companies that are employee owned and are running fine. Some of the most successful companies are that way. So I'm not saying it's not possible. But what I am saying is that having the makeup of boards of directors determined by employees is not necessarily the best thing, especially if those employees are afraid of losing their jobs in a world where the jobs are going to go away whether you're afraid of them or not. That's my point.
Workers were on their corporate board, I doubt very much that they would be rewarding Elon Musk with $1 trillion pay package.
So let me just stop right here and make an argument. Who cares how much Elon Musk is being paid? Who really cares? Seriously. The money that Elon Musk has, the money that Jeff Bezos has, the money that Larry Ellison has, all of that money is not money that could have been in your pocket or my pocket. That's not how money works. Your ability to generate income is not limited by anyone else's ability to generate income. Oh, it seems that way, but if it seems that way to you, you need a broader perspective, because there's so much money on this planet, and your access to it is limited only by your ability to create value. It's not even limited to that. It's only limited to your belief in how much money you can create for yourself. I'm being very spiritual here, but spiritual dynamics is what underlies how physical reality works, and physical reality includes your income. It seems like your income is derived from the output that you make at your company, but it's really coming from what you believe is possible with regard to generating income. So the fact that Elon Musk has $1 trillion incentive package is irrelevant to this situation. This situation is about a tectonic shift in human society, in human civilization. And it's coming because people like Elon Musk are being incentivized with a lot of money. That's how our system works. It is not a bad thing that Elon Musk has $1 trillion pay package. It's totally irrelevant.
Third, we must greatly increase profit sharing at our nation's largest corporations. In my view, workers should receive at least 20% of the stock in companies they work for.
I disagree on this. The profit sharing should go into a sovereign wealth fund that will eventually grow to the point where human beings no longer need to work, while at the same time the sovereign wealth fund will pay them an income that they don't have to work for, kind of like a universal basic or universal high income. And that money, the universal high income, will continue until money is no longer necessary to get the things you want, because scarcity will be eliminated and abundance, superabundance, will be the norm. So having employees owning that 20% makes no sense if you can pay that 20% or more into a sovereign wealth fund, which then can kick out enough money for everyone to have like a 6-figure income. That's what we see in at least one of the countries in the Middle East. Is what we see in Alaska, where people are paid out of a fund that's funded by the oil reserves in Alaska. So these aren't brand new ideas. This is stuff that's happening now around the world. The United States can have it happen too. But here we go. We've got Bernie Sanders once again arguing for status quo type solutions instead of coming up with something innovative. This idea he's proposing is not innovative.
Corporate profits should not just be going to enrich wealthy stockholders and the billionaires who own them.
Okay, let me stop here too. I've got to jump in. So it's not just billionaires who own them, and not all stockholders are wealthy. Most stockholders are holders of stock through pension funds or 401ks, and they're people like your grandma, people like your parents, your grandparents, retired ordinary folks. These are the people that own these stocks, not only wealthy people. Sanders is severely distorting who owns all the stocks of these companies. Sure, there are billionaires and there are hedge funds that own some of these stocks as well. Sure. But it is not just wealthy people and billionaires who own them.
Fourth, we need to substantially expand the concept of employee ownership in America. When workers own their own businesses and are more involved in the decision-making processes, they will make choices that benefit everyone in the company, not just the people on top.
In this case, I agree in the short term, but in the long term, from a spiritual perspective, human beings don't always serve the best interests of other human beings. There's a lot of mistrust and distortion in the minds of human beings. It's way better, rather than having people owning businesses and them making the decisions, to have artificial intelligence making meta level and ground level decisions on behalf of humanity in ways that are much more efficient, much more process driven, much more results oriented, and can be much better. The decisions can be much better if you program the AI to foster the expansion of human joy, well-being, comfort, and freedom. We don't need people making decisions for people. We already see how difficult, how painful, how complex, how chaotic it can be when humans are trying to get together to agree on some sort of decision. It's much better, rather than having Americans own companies, to have AI driving resource allocation decisions with the AI programmed in such a way to foster the things I just said a minute ago, basically human expansion. So again, Bernie Sanders is talking like the old man he is. He's not looking forward into the future with great idea to come up with great ideas. He's looking at what's always been and wanting more of that put in place in an era when all of that he's basing his decisions on are being dismantled.
Fifth, instead of providing billions of dollars in tax breaks to companies that are throwing workers out on the street and replacing them with new technologies, we should enact a robot tax on large corporations and use that revenue to improve the lives of workers who have been harmed in this transition.
This is a good idea. It's one that's been talked about for quite a while now. A tax on corporations that are benefiting from artificial intelligence and robot workers is a good idea in the short term. Yeah, it's a good idea. And to not base it on profits, net income, or to base it on revenue, but instead to base it on some other factor would be a really good idea. So this is the first idea he's offered that is forward-looking instead of retroactive. Good for you, Bernie.
Bottom line, AI and robotics will bring a profound transformation to our country. Nobody denies that. In my view, we must fight to make sure that these changes benefit all of us and not just a handful of billionaires. Let the debate begin, and we need your participation. Thank you very much.
Okay, what did we see here? I agree that a debate should be had. The debate's been happening here on YouTube and elsewhere among people who are following the AI boom, the rise of the AI age. Bernie is coming late to the party, as are many of our other legislators. But the biggest point I want to make here is notice how Bernie is talking about this future that's coming. He is still couched in the idea that jobs are important, that they are essential to human beingness. The things that are essential to human beingness are food, shelter, light, the energy that comes from the sun, air to breathe. These are basic inherent needs of the human organism. Jobs are not a constant of the universe, and so it's not essential. Workers, that label, is a distortion. There's much more to life than working, and AI is giving us the opportunity to explore what's much more about that life, about life experience. But in order for us to move in that direction, we have to adopt a bigger picture. We have to adopt a bigger picture than what Bernie Sanders is talking about here. This is not about us against the billionaires. This is not about you losing your job and therefore losing your income. This is about a vision that certain people see, that many people have wanted for decades, if not hundreds of years. And finally, we're moving into that vision. And the real question is, where are you with regard to that movement? Are you on board? Do you see the promise, or do you see the peril? If you see the peril, I suggest you subscribe to this channel, because here at Positively Focused, one of the things I'm doing is taking an extremely positive look at the emergence of the AI age and encouraging people to dust off their spirituality and realize this is a spiritual process of expansion. We're taking humanity someplace it's never been before, but has always wanted, always talked about in our science fiction. And now it's becoming science fact. It's becoming our everyday reality. And our legislators, like Bernie Sanders, are struggling to keep up. Some are trying to catch up. Are you? See you in the next video. Subscribe for more if this was inspiring.